Everybody loves a good anime anti-hero. Light Yagami, Uchiha Itachi, Ken Kaneki, Gogo 13, and so much more. But to many, there's one anti-hero that stands above the rest. He's smooth, he's styling, he's silly, and he drives the fastest 1957 Fiat 500 you've ever seen. I think you know who I mean. It's in the title of this video. Lupin III is a thief who stole our hearts, but this heist wasn't done in a single day. No, it took years of manga, anime, and different colored jackets for Lupin to become the anime superstar he is today. And it wasn't an easy job. There were some ups and downs and even few unexpected turns that even the most dedicated fans might not know about. So, make sure your valuables are locked up tight, because this is the history of Lupin III. Before we dive into the world of blazes, bullets, and high-stakes thievery, let's take a look at the man who made it all possible. Lupin III is most notably attributed to legendary manga artist Kazuhiko Kato, better known by his pen name Monkey Punch. Born in Hamanaka, Hokkaido, Japan in 1937, Kato was very fond of manga from a young age. As a child and teenager, he was known to produce original comic strips for his school newspaper and enter drawing contests he found in magazines. Kato loved art, but didn't really consider it as anything more than a hobby. While attending technical school in Tokyo, Kato continued to self-publish his work and was soon discovered by a Japanese publisher, Futabasha. Futabasha, known for their wide array of revolving magazine publications, offered him a job producing yonkoma, a type of traditional 4-panel comic strips that usually includes a joke or a gag. With this new offer on the table, Kato decided to drop out of school to pursue manga full-time. As he made the jump to professional manga artist, Kato began to work under the pen name Kazuki Kato. It makes more sense if you look at the name in Japanese. It's actually pronounced exactly the same, but it uses different characters. The original looks like this, and the pen name looks like that. In 1965, Kato made his official debut with the manga series Playboy School, which ran in Futabasha's Manga Story magazine. Kato once again used a pen name, this time springing for Eiji Gamuran. It was at this time that Kato began toying with the idea for a new limited series, one centered around a dashing gentleman thief. He proposed the idea to his editor at the time. Now, for another Kato name change to the infamous one we know and love, Monkey Punch. This name was actually suggested by Kato's editor, and so Kato decided his new moniker will be Monkey Punch for this new manga series. And even though he didn't like the name or even understand why his boss had picked it, he agreed. Since this new manga was only planned to run for 3 months, Kato knew he could ditch his new monkey moniker once it was over. Of course, as you have may gathered, things didn't exactly go according to plan, and Kato was known as Monkey Punch for the rest of his manga career. I guess it all worked out, but I don't know. No, maybe not for Kato. While brainstorming ideas for his main character, Kato decided to link his suave thief to a similar fictional character from French literature, one Arsène Lupin. This Lupin, the original master of disguise, was the creation of French writer Maurice Leblanc, who penned the thieves' first adventure in 1905. Over the years, Arsène Lupin has become the focus of dozens of books, movies, television shows, plays, comics, and even a video game or two. Fun fact, Persona 5's Joker was actually inspired by Arsène Lupin, and the main persona he summons is even named Arsène. Persona 5's Café Leblanc is also named in honor of the original Lupin creator. Just wanted to mention that to show that Arsène Lupin was, and still is, a big deal, despite his ties to an illegitimate anime grandson. As you might imagine, Kato never reached out to the Leblanc estate to ask permission for use of the Lupin name, an oversight that would come back to haunt him years later, when the character was set for an international release. Ironically, Leblanc did nearly the same thing back in 1906 while writing one of Arsène Lupin's first crossover stories. You see, Leblanc decided to add in famous fictional detective Sherlock Holmes without the permission of the creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Doyle was not amused and requested Leblanc take his character's name out of future printings and stories. LeBlanc, disappointed but undeterred, simply changed the detective's name to, and this is not a joke, SHERLOCK Holmes. Nice. Good one, LeBlanc. Throwing caution to the wind, Monkey Punch cemented his idea of Lupin as the grandson of LeBlanc's character, adding in a little James Bond sex appeal and Mad Magazine humor for good measure. His goal was to craft a plot that could both serve as an exciting comedy adventure and pay homage to the Lupin of old. Though Monkey Punch initially felt he should keep his Lupin connections to Arsène Lupin a secret, he was eventually, and perhaps unfortunately, convinced otherwise. Lupin III landed on newsstands on August 10, 1967 as part of Furabashi's weekly manga action magazine. Because the publication was marketed towards young men, the magazine was a bit more dark, violent, and sexy than, say, Shonen Jump. In no time at all, and much to its creator's confusion, Lupin III was a certified hit. With this newfound popularity, Monkey Punch's initial 3-month run turned into a nearly 2-year commitment. As the series progressed, Monkey Punch was able to add in new plotlines and round out a solid cast of misfits and mercenaries to both help and hinder Lupin during his many heists and misadventures. On Lupin's side was ace gunman and my guy, Daisuke Jigen, a character based on tough guy actor James Coburn, particularly his character in the movie The Magnificent Seven. Initially introduced as an assassin sent to kill Lupin, master swordsman Goemon Nishikawa was added by Monkey Punch later in the series to inject some Japanese flair into his mostly Western world. As the two duel, they eventually grow to respect each other, and Goemon joins the thief side as an ally. One of the most famous anime ladies, named after the iconic Mount Fuji, Lupin's elusive love interest, Fujiko Mine, actually began life as multiple buxom babes, all named Fujiko. Eventually, Monkey Punch decided to just combine this string of similarly named ladies into a single femme fatale. Monkey Punch compared the playful romantic relationship between Lupin and Fujiko to that of characters D'Artagnan and Milady de Winter from the swashbuckling epic The Three Musketeers. Milady. In a 2003 interview, Monkey Punch described Lupin and Fujiko as not necessarily lovers, not necessarily husband and wife, but more just having fun as man and woman with each other. The key to the relationship behind Lupin and his gang was that they didn't always see eye to eye, often teaming up with a secret agenda in mind, and occasionally double-crossing each other to get ahead. On the other side of the law was the determined and often frustrated Inspector Koichi Zenigata, the by-the-books detective hell-bent on putting Lupin behind bars. Zenigata's no-nonsense demeanor was the perfect foil to Lupin's carefree criminal attitude and remains an integral part of Lupin's thievery and shenanigans to this very day. The original manga, which ran from August 1967 to May 1969, received a few additional chapters known as Lupin III: New Adventures in August of 1971. It would be 6 long years until Lupin would officially return to his manga roots with the appropriately titled New Lupin III. Nice. Good one, guys. The new series ran from June of 1977 until May of 1981, and would eventually be translated into English as Lupin III: World's Most Wanted. And what was Lupin doing for the 6 years in between manga adventures? It appears he was fathering a child. Huh. For you see, there was actually a Lupin spin-off printed in the late 1975 that revolved around the Master Thief's son. The often forgotten Lupin III Jr. ran for a whopping 18 chapters in the short-lived weekly shonen action magazine, a publication marketed to young boys. While the manga never explicitly stated who Lupin III Jr.'s parents were, Monkey Punch would later confirm the boy was indeed the son of Lupin and Fujiko. Those two don't really seem like the best role model for a child, but what are you gonna do? Also, shouldn't this kid just be called Lupin IV? In between the first magazine run and its kiddie spin-off, the exploits of Lupin III made the thrilling leap from the magazine pages to the small screen. Those who follow manga and anime know that if a manga becomes a hit, even on a small scale, there's a good chance it will be made into an anime as soon as possible. This was exactly the case with Lupin III. A short animated pilot was put into production by Tokyo Movie Shinsha, or TMS, and was completed in 1969, just as the first manga came to a close. The approximate 12.5-minute pilot introduced the 5 main characters and gave a background on each, while also showcasing the kind of action and humor a film centered around the series could offer a more mature audience. Though the pilot was created with hopes of securing funding for a Lupin movie, those hopes went unrealized for some time. Eventually, executives at Yomiuri Television saw the pilot and agreed to fund and broadcast an anime series based on Lupin and company. 2 key players in productions of the pilot, Osamu Kobayashi and Masaki Osumi, were brought on as character designer and director, respectively. Kobayashi and Osumi had previously worked together on the 1969 hit anime Lupin, a series loosely based on a popular collection of Finnish books by the same name. Love you, Lupin, you cute little hippo? Lupin III Part 1, known simply as Lupin III at the time, made its TV debut on October 24, 1971. Featuring darker themes and an emphasis on realism, it was one of, if not the first anime targeted at adults. Somewhat surprisingly, the show's first few episodes were met with low ratings. It seems the mean-spirited and selfish attitudes portrayed by Lupin and his gang didn't translate to quality TV, making the characters a bad combination of unrelatable and unlikable. With this issue in mind and 9 episodes already completed or in production, TMS asked series director Osumi to transform the show into something more lighthearted, with the hopes of giving Lupin a broader appeal. Osumi stubbornly refused, adamant that the show stick close to its manga source material. Shocked by his non-compliance, the studio fired him immediately. Brought in to replace Osumi were 2 talented youngsters by the name of Isao Takahata and Hayao Miyazaki. Yes, that Hayao Miyazaki. The 2 co-directors took the studio's concern to heart and worked tirelessly to turn the show around. Soon, Lupin and friends and Zenigata became more friendly and comical, acquiring agreeable traits that would set the standard for each character moving forward. Other aspects, such as Fujiko's overbearing eroticism, were toned down so as to not cheapen her involvement and, so the kiddies could watch. Classic episodes from Part 1 saw Lupin coming to terms with a death row sentence, the animated introduction of Goemon as a foe turned friend, and a wonderful romp where members of the gang must race the clock to defuse their own exploding wristwatches. Unfortunately, the show's new upbeat direction wasn't enough to save Lupin's inaugural anime run, which came to an end less than 6 months after its premiere with a total of 23 episodes. But fear not, because there's something much bigger and cooler in the works than some 2D animation. Yes, I'm talking about live action movie. Lupin III's strange psychokinetic strategy was released in Japanese theaters on August 3, 1974. Yuki Meguro portrayed the titular Lupin III as he attempted to pull off his most daring heist and win the heart of the sultry Fujiko. It wasn't very good. Luckily, audiences wouldn't have to put up with another live-action Lupin movie for another 40 years with the release of the 2014 comedy thriller Lupin III. It was better, but still not great. With the live-action antics out of the way, Lupin made his jump back into the small screen with a much more successful anime, known as New Lupin III or Lupin III Part 2. Though Part 1 ended with the 23rd episode, multiple reruns over the 5 years since it aired helped build a new audience to start Part 2 on the right footing. To do so, they imitated the same happy-go-lucky atmosphere that Takahata and Miyazaki had brought to the table in the latter half of Part 1. Premiering on October 3, 1977, the second series would last almost 3 years, with a staggering 155 episodes, all of which can be found on streaming on Crunchyroll.com. Please, it's the only way I get paid. Part 2 had more standout plots and shenanigans than any Lupin series to date. There is one where Lupin is challenged to crack a series of uncrackable safes, the one where we learn of Jigen's ill-fated Cold War romance, and the one where Lupin and Zenigata winds up cuffed together in the desert and must work together to escape. All classics. During Part 2's 3-year run, Lupin returned to movie theaters 2 times, sticking to his more alluring anime form. The first, 1978's Lupin vs. the Clone, also known as The Mystery of Mamo and The Secret of Mamo, is both loved and hated by die-hard fans of the series. With ancient beings, clonings, and immortality all in the mix, it was a bit more science fiction-y than the normal Lupin outings of the time. The movie that followed, 1979's, is considered by many to be the best Lupin movie and one of the best anime movies of all time. Cagliostro, loosely based on Arsène Lupin's adventure from 1925, is well known as Hayao Miyazaki's theatrical movie debut. The story follows Lupin as he attempts to thwart devious counterfeiter Count Cagliostro and save the Count's soon-to-be bride, who is being held against her will. A shining glimpse of what was to come out from the Studio Ghibli's co-founder, who would go on to produce such classics as My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, Laputa Castle in the Sky, and many, many more. Though audience members of the time enjoyed the movie, and do to this day, Cagliostro is known as one of the most tame Lupin adventures to ever grace the silver screen. A fact that's less than surprising now when you consider the family-friendly nature of Miyazaki's many blockbusters. After Cagliostro, Miyazaki would come back to direct 2 episodes of the anime, including the final episode of Part 2. The final episode featured quite a few characters with striking similarities to those in future Miyazaki works, including a girl who looks identical to Nausicaa in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and a robot that would show up in 1986's Castle in the Sky. It would be Miyazaki's last official involvement with this series. And thus, we come to what's likely the least known anime series in the Lupin catalog, Lupin the 8th. You heard me right, 8th. Set for a 1984 premiere in multiple markets around the world, Lupin the 8th was a collaboration between TMS and the French-based offices of animation studio Geek. You may recall them as the studio responsible for such hits like the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and Captain Planet. Lupin the 8th was planned to be a kid-friendly spin-off set in the distant future. All 5 main characters were set to star, though technically they were the great-great-great-grandchildren of the original cast, and they also had the same names. Revolvers and katanas would be replaced with laser guns and beam swords, and Fujiko would be a bit less curvy. The show actually had a full episode animated, though not voiced, before one big issue came to light. And that issue was the estate of Maurice LeBlanc. You see, they didn't really have any issues with Lupin's name being used in Japan, but they weren't too keen on allowing TMS and DiC to plaster it all over TV screens throughout Europe and North America. Apparently, LeBlanc's estate said they would grant the studios the right to the name, but only for an exceedingly large sum of money. The actual amount has never been disclosed, but it was apparently too much for TMS and DiC, who halted production of the show immediately. Fun fact, since both studios had lost their investment on Lupin the 8th and had a time slot to fill, they decided to take a chance on another cartoon. One, Inspector Gadget. That's right, if not for the failures of Lupin the 8th, the world may have never been introduced to the bumbling cyborg sleuth. Go, Gadget, time slot. This wasn't the first or last issues with Lupin's name would come into play, with many international releases changing his name to the Japanese pronunciation Rupin, or simply calling him Wolf, which is the literal translation of the name Lupin in French. In fact, in France, the series had to originally be renamed Edgar Detective Cambrioleur or Edgar Detective Burglar, which is a terrible name. Luckily for Monkey Punch and TMS, the original Arsène Lupin concept and name finally entered the public domain in 2012, 70 years after LeBlanc's passing. R.I.P. LeBlanc and R.I.P. Edgar. Following Part 2 and the failed production of Lupin the 8th was, you guessed it, Part 3. Each series up to this point had featured Lupin donning a different colored jacket. Part 1, it was green. Part 2, it was red, and for Part 3, Lupin settled for a snazzy pink. Running from early 1984 to late 1985 with 50 episodes, Lupin's 3rd series was known for its zany antics and dramatic visual shifts midway through. The show began with a more realistic and gritty take on the characters and setting, in line with the feel of the original manga. Around the middle of the series, the showrunners decided to take things in a more Scooby-Doo direction, with character designs becoming more cartoony and exaggerated, with many of the animation scenes being subcontracted to different studios. Part 3 was also known for its off-model animation, with some character designs fluctuating wildly between episodes. Though it's often considered the worst era of Lupin, Part 3 still featured some wonderfully wacky adventures, including a heist in New York City that features both ghosts and a golden pinball machine. Part 3 represented the last anime series Lupin fans would witness for over 25 years, though it was far from his last animated escapades during that time. Multiple movies and original video animations were released, as well as a yearly Lupin TV special. In fact, starting in 1989, the Lupin specials have aired in Japan almost every year, with the only exceptions being 2014, 2015, and 2017. One of the most popular of these specials came in 2009 when Lupin III saw a crossover with another TMS series, Detective Conan, known outside of Japan as Case Closed. The special was such a success that a full crossover movie was later released in 2013. I wonder if SHERLOCK showed up. In 2012, as a part of the anime's 40th anniversary, a new, sexy spin-off was officially teased for release later that year. This 13-episode series was Lupin III, the woman called Fujiko Mine. As you might have guessed, the series followed not Lupin, but a young Fujiko, showcasing her introduction to Lupin in the world of backstabbing thievery. The spin-off was by far the most mature Lupin entry to ever appear on TV, containing so much nudity that Cartoon Network couldn't even cut it down to fit within their Toonami anime block. While not everyone's cup of tea, the woman called Fujiko Mine certainly set a new standard of excellence when it came to animation in the Lupin series. Then it finally happened in 2015. 30 years after Part 3, the mainline Lupin series made its official return with Lupin III Part 4, The Italian Adventure. Lupin had always been a huge hit in Italy, so this was welcome news to the series' many Italian fans. With Lupin sporting a dashing blue jacket, Part 4 was considered by most to be an excellent combination of what made past comics, movies, and shows so captivating. The 24 episodes managed to be goofy, serious, and sexy, all while leading viewers on a bombastic tour of Italy and surrounding European countries. Story beats included Lupin getting married, Lupin going undercover as a high school teacher, and Zenigata putting the master thief behind bars in dramatic fashion. After Part 4 comes Part 5. Still got it, baby. Set in France and released in 2018, it expanded on Part 4's use of overarching storylines, weaving classic thievery exploits with modern themes revolving around technology and social media. The series also introduced fans to teenage hacker phenom Emi Ennen, who plays an important role as Lupin's occasional tech guru. Most recently, in December of 2019, a CGI Lupin movie, Lupin III, the First, made its premiere in theaters across Japan. Though its plot was thought to be a bit formulaic, the film was lauded for its smooth transition to 3D and stunning animation, especially that thirst trap jigging that looks like Keanu Reeves. Wowee. Daddy-like. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to dive into every little bit of Lupin media and merchandise out there, but let it be known that the franchise has produced endless amounts of video games, soundtracks, and action figures. There are even few Lupin III theme park rides and 2 musicals based on the series, one of which with an all-female cast. Also, fun fact, while I was in Japan, I saw that they were selling Lupin gum, so there's that as well. And as many know, Lupin's creator, Kazuhiko Monkey Punch Kato, passed away in April of 2019 due to complications related to pneumonia. He was 81 years old, and he gave over 50 years of his life to the manga and anime industry, inspiring everyone from Cowboy Bebop director Shinichiro Watanabe to video game genius Hideo Kojima. Never far from his creation, Monkey Punch even directed the Lupin movie, Dead or Alive, in 1996 and helped flesh out the plot of the live-action reboot in 2014. Long before his death, Monkey Punch noted that he hoped Lupin's story would never end, and that if it had to, Lupin and his longtime rival Inspector Zenigata would have to end up as equals. Here's hoping Lupin never gets caught and the legacy of Kazuhiko Kato live on for eternity. And if you're itching to take a dive into Lupin's universe, I got some news for you. Lupin III Part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all streaming on Crunchyroll.com for your viewing pleasure. That's nearly 300 episodes of hilarious heists, gratuitous gunfire, and daring daylight getaways. You really don't need to start from part 1, and some of the older episodes certainly don't hold up as well as more recent ones. So, if you're new to Lupin, we recommend starting with part 4 or 5. Then, you can dig back to the retro series at your own discretion. So, what are you waiting for? Thank you so much for watching, y'all. Be sure to subscribe and check out our other videos. Now, I'm gonna go and rewatch all of Lupin, and I guess I'll go steal the Declaration of Independence, Lupin style.